Continuing to follow the biggest races here in Nevada, including the governor's race.
Right now we got Joe Bartels. He is live at the South Point following Republican candidate Adam Laxalt. But first, let's check in with Brian Callahan. He's at Caesars Palace talking with Democratic candidate Steve Sisolak supporters. Brian.
Yeah, it's about 15 minutes or so until they open the doors here. We're told Sisolak himself likely will not get here until well after we start getting results and start seeing some of these numbers in what's expected to be one of the closest gubernatorial races in the country. Sisolak started his day voting with his two daughters who have featured prominently in his campaign ads. This as he continues to try and get people out to vote by pushing his efforts to improve education in the state by increasing funding, increasing teachers' pay, and reducing class sizes. Also pushing really hard on his efforts to protect health care, getting more people access to health care, as well as getting protections for those with pre-existing conditions. It's just like really trying to push voters to get to the polls today. We're hearing some places have hundreds of people in line still waiting to vote just before the polls closed here tonight. So they know turnout is going to be an important issue in this election here tonight for the governor's race, so we will see what it is as the numbers start coming in here in the next hour or so. Reporting live, Brian Callahan, 13 Action News.
All right, Brian, why do I get the feeling it might be a late night here, right?
Sure.
I certainly know just how close this race is going to be. Reporter Joe Bartels right now live at the South Point.
And Joe, I understand Adam Laxalt is watching the results from northern Nevada tonight.
At time, Tricia, he's up in northern Nevada, but some of his supporters here in southern Nevada here at the South Point, they're waiting and watching for those election results to start trickling in. We expect it really at any moment, and this is going to be such a close contest. Laxalt told us last night that he expects, get this, about 500 votes could separate him between his opponents. Of course, Laxalt here was in the Valley last night trying to rally his supporters to get out to the polls. He said a vote for him is a vote for low taxes, reduced regulations, and fixing the Nevada education system once and for all.
The choice is clear for voters all across this state, and we believe that there are going to be enough Nevadans to put me in the governor's office. You with me?
Yeah! And as you alluded to, some polls are putting Laxalt and Sisolak within a fraction of a point, essentially a dead heat, neck and neck for this contest here. So if the polls are as close as it suggests here with election night, we could be in for a very long night here at the South Point. Of course, we'll follow all of the developments for you and have the very latest here on 13 Action News. Reporting live, Joe Bartels, 13 Action News.
Yeah, wow. Joe, with all those people voting, talking about 500 votes, percentage-wise, what that is. It's the slimmest of margins.
We will be here late.
Yes, we will.
It'll be interesting to see how this works out. Well, we are tracking the latest numbers on that hotly contested governor's race. And here's Tom George to break it all down for us. This is pretty incredible.
It really is incredible. As Joe just mentioned, this could come down to just a few hundred votes. Certainly a tale of the North and the South. Obviously, Steve Sisolak, very much a known quantity down here in Clark County. His long time as a commissioner, very well known. But Adam Laxalt, his base is up north. So depending on where the turnout is, that could really decide that race. But really the X factor in this race is Ryan Bundy. He's the independent. He's going after the same kind of Republican, conservative, rural voters that might normally vote for Adam Laxalt. So if he can even get about 3 to 5% of the vote taken away from Adam Laxalt, that could help Steve Sisolak in his bid for the governor's mansion. Now, we're also watching some of those national figures. We're told this Texas Senate race could be going for Ted Cruz. We'll continue to keep an eye on that as well.
All right,
Tom. Imagine that Ryan Bundy perhaps could be the factor, right?
That's exactly correct. Adam Laxalt's very worried that Bundy is going to bleed votes from him, no question.
And Steve Sisolak, he, of course, Clark County Commissioner, he spent a lot of money in ads, and he talked about women's rights with his daughters. I mean, we're talking 500 votes could separate them. What do you think about Clark County in terms of how they will show out for Steve Sisolak?
Yeah, no question. Sisolak has a lot of support here. His base is here, and there's a lot of voters here. So I think in that sense, Sisolak's got to feel pretty good.
You know, what we're seeing with the voter turnout, I'm curious to get your take on this, because the numbers sort of would favor, at least historically, the Democrats here in Nevada. Now, if you sort of break down the Democrats, whether it's Sisolak, Rosen, sort of all down the line, would you see the possibility that some Democrats would be winning and others not, and which Democrats would be the most vulnerable, do you think?
Yeah, I would say that Sisolak's a bit vulnerable here in the race for governor.
Okay.
I think that Jackie Rosen's probably got a better chance of winning the Senate if I had to pick between the two.
Right.
But I would say, yeah, Democrats have an edge right now in early turnout, but it's not much of an edge. It's a pretty small edge.
And there's a lot of governorships up for up 36, I think, across the country, and that's important depending on what happens at the federal level.
That's exactly right. I think Democrats are going to pick up some governor's mansions, but how many is going to be the question.
Interesting. Okay.
Right.
Thank you so
Stay tuned.
much.
Francis Carlton from CSN is going to be here all night, sort of helping us keep our numbers straight.
Yes.
It's so important. We're going to be right back with more now on question 3, the $100 million question that has been dominating our airwaves.
And we are still waiting on numbers, so stay with us. Well, now to the $100 million question that has been dominating the airwaves over the past month.
Well, question 3, called the Energy Choice Initiative, aimed at creating a competitive retail electric market right here in the state. Now, supporters funded largely by Las Vegas Sands and Switch, saying a move away from NV Energy's monopoly will save ratepayers and also give them more options on who supplies their power. Well, those supporters also claiming the move would help push solar and other renewable electricity generation.
NV Energy has donated more than $63 million to the coalition to defeat question 3, saying the change, which would be written into the Constitution of Nevada, and that could be risky. Opponents also saying the move would also open ratepayers up to the fluctuations in prices on the electric market and would only benefit large-scale energy users like casinos and businesses. So we are tracking the latest numbers on Nevada's most expensive campaign question, and that's 3.
All right, Tom, George, you have that breakdown. They had ads all over the place throughout this entire campaign.
They really did. We are still waiting on some of those numbers to come in, but as you said, we've seen a lot of ads on question 3 right now. But the big thing is, if the no vote does pass on question 3, that would be probably one of the biggest upsets, and that's because you have to pass it twice. You have to pass it once in 2016 and then again in 2018. And in 2016, the yes vote had more than 70% of the vote. It was a landslide. So the fact that polls even have the no vote leading right now just shows the power of messaging and the power of these advertisements, especially NV Energy making a big push on the no vote. So given the fact that it passed with more than 70% last time, just the fact that the no vote is potentially doing so well just shows the power of messaging and the power of those ads. Tricia, Todd?
All right, absolutely. And joining us now is political analyst Francis Carlton from CSN. Question 3 was a tricky one when I voted, and I think a lot of people get confused. You have to really read that when you're in the ballot box there. And talk to me about that, because a lot of consumers think it will be really beneficial for them. They don't want a monopoly on NV Energy anymore.
That's right, especially I think because Nevada is a libertarian state with that kind of a leaning, right? It's sort of anti-regulatory.
Right.
So I think when it says to break up a monopoly, that's going to draw some yes votes.
Right, but there's the other side of that too. You could be paying the fluctuating prices.
Well, that's right. I think large corporations would almost certainly benefit if 3 passes, but probably smaller consumers at more of a disadvantage.
You know, with this sort of question, right, that we've seen sort of in our history, as you know, Tricia was talking about, it can be somewhat confusing, and there's so much to it, right? There's a lot to sort of unpeel. How much do you think in questions like this, advertising really does play an influential role in letting voters decide who they're going to pick?
Oh, quite a bit. You know, this passed, I think, 2 years ago with about 72% of the vote, and John Ralston, at least, is predicting that it's going to go down by about 20 to 25 points, probably because all that money flowed in from the side of the no vote.
And again, I know that Tom touched on this, but we have to vote on it again in 2020 for it to actually happen.
I think that's correct. So that's the idea, that you make it fairly difficult to amend the Nevada Constitution.
Right. Okay, good.
All right, now let's move on to question 6, the Renewable Energy Standards Initiative. That would require utility companies to get 50% of power from renewable sources by 2030. The current standards are 25% by 2025. Supporters of question 6 saying Nevadans need to lead the way in clean energy. Opponents raising questions here about the need for the change, saying that Nevada electric rates are stable and among the lowest in the country, adding the change could also lead to an increase in taxes.
And we are continuing to follow the 2018 midterm elections. Coming up next.
And for more information about each candidate or to learn about more of our numerous ballot questions, just head to ktnv.com/democracy2018.